Bharatiya Janata Party is said to be the richest party in the world. So, the kind of money that can be a lure. Many other people who have left, Congress party have become very important leaders in Bharatiya Janata Party. And they all had, problems of access to Mr. Rahul Gandhi. It was a measure which was supposed to have checked the defections. It's a different matter that it has not worked at all. Take, for example, these people, who Shiv Sena members, 6 of them who were on a platform with Honorable Mr. Shinde. Now, they have therefore categorically said that we have voluntarily left Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's party. The moment they say so, then they stand disqualified. Nobody is willing to read the text of 10th schedule in literal sense. Everybody thinks that a split is possible and therefore 6 of them can walk out. No. See, that's not possible. This started during Mrs. Gandhi's time. Now, over the years, what has happened is that the judges have increasingly become pro-establishment. Today, Prime Minister Modi is in power. He is extraordinarily powerful. He is very popular. So, it takes a tremendous courage for a judge to really decide against his government, his policies and his actions, or his party's actions. Ideal course, and this is how Supreme Court should interpret and say that, all right, you 6 gentlemen from Shiv Sena or TMC, you want to leave and join somebody else? Fine. You first resign your positions. So, these 6 people going on their own doesn't make any sense. Mr. Uddhav Thackeray or Mamata Banerjee have not decided to merge their political parties with anyone. So, I think it's Supreme Court will have to do it. Let's see what it does. Although I don't have much hope from the Supreme Court today. Every sensitive case, a government has won. There is no doubt that Mr. Modi and Bharatiya Janata Party want opposition Mukt Bharat.
Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. It was in 1967 that Gayalal, a legislator, switched parties 3 times in one day. Yes, you heard right. He jumped from one party to another 3 times, all in a day. But it was not till 1985 that the government brought in the anti-defection law. So today, while defections by individuals attract disqualification, mass defections do not. In other words, if 2/3 of the legislators merge with another political party, the defected members can escape disqualification. But this is not as simple as it sounds. What we see today are parties breaking up. What we find is an opposition desperate to keep its flock together. Looking back at the years gone by and those that lie ahead, it is time to re-examine the anti-defection law, to assess whether it serves a purpose and to scan the gaps and loopholes that exist. We may have done away with the likes of Gayalal, but hasn't the existing law created many demons that are playing havoc? If recent events are anything to go by, then the answer is yes. We have with us senior advocate Dushyant Dave, who says the rot must stop. It is time for a rethink on the existing law. Listen in to Dushyant Dave in this edition of HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. Welcome to the show, Mr. Dushyant Dave, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to begin from the beginning and rewind to 1967. Would Gayalal, the legislator who changed parties thrice in one day in 1967, be smiling from the heavens, or would he be turning in his grave the way events have panned out?
I think Gayaram would be very pleased with himself because, he may have started what was supposedly a politically immoral act, but he must be now very happy to know that it has become a regular feature in Indian politics. It's a very interesting thing that Gayaram left, and when he rejoined Congress party, and then when he rejoined Congress party, then Chief Minister, welcomed him and said from a public platform, now Gaya Ram will be called Ayaram because he came back to the party. It was not really a solitary feature in Haryana politics at that point of time, but large number of people were doing this same thing right from the 50s. And that amazes me that Gayaram became, a symbol of what is known as Ayaram Gayaram business in politics.
In fact, in one sense, it was a name change because he was actually Gaya Lal and then he
Yes,
was being referred to as Gaya Ram.
correct, absolutely correct.
Just decode for us the journey of the anti defection law when it was introduced, the ups and downs, the twists and turns.
I was looking at the figures. Gayaram incident is of 1967, following the fourth general election. But there were about 552 cases of defection between the first general election and the fourth general election. And after the fourth general election, in 12 months, 1 year alone, 438 defections took place. Out of so many people, almost 116 were given ministerial berths. Now we are feeling, that it's becoming so endemic. But it appears that it was endemic even in the 50s and 60s. I think political morality had ceased to exist after, a freedom struggle. And all those who came into public life suddenly decided that we must have power or we must have money.
But initially it was individuals. Now they are groups, which makes the situation worse.
You are right, absolutely. Problem is there is so much of desire for power. There is so much of money floating around. Political parties are extraordinarily rich today. For example, Bharatiya Janata Party is said to be the richest party in the world. So, the kind of money that, can be a lure besides the, positions which are being offered. It's not just that they are given ministerial berths, these guys who cross over. They are, given all kinds of, they will be repeated in parliament or assemblies. Then they will be given many other positions as chairman of public sector undertakings or, cooperative societies or other statutory boards. So there are large number of ways in which, you can lure these people to cross over from one party to the other. If a group is crossing over, there is always one amongst them who is a leader. He takes his friends along and he promises that while I will become a minister or a chief minister or a deputy, as Maharashtra we have seen, you will all be accommodated somewhere, so don't worry. I'm sure besides that there are other allurements which are offered to them. Everybody is interested in power, and simultaneously you must also realize one thing, that the people who are leaving political parties, their political leaders are equally responsible for people leaving.
Just explain this to me about leaders being responsible.
See, what happens is that, many a times the leadership of, particular party or parties are not accessible to, members of parliament or legislative members of the assemblies. And there is a lot of gap between them. For example, Congress lost some of the best people in last 10 years. Whether it is Himanta Biswas or whether it is Sindhya, many other people who have left, Congress party have become very important leaders in Bharatiya Janata Party. And they all had, problems of access to Mr. Rahul Gandhi. We all know that. Take, for example, Mamata Banerjee. She was a very powerful leader so long as she was in power and people stuck to her. The moment she lost the power, people realized that there was no point sticking to her because she was giving an entire responsibility to her nephew and we were not being counted. So, that gap between the leadership and these members also sometimes works against the, interests of the party. So, there are a combination of reasons why people leave. It's not just power, money, but also, dissatisfaction within the party.
Before we go on to the next point, let me take you back to 1985 when the anti defection law was introduced. Just take us through then and the twists and turns.
1985 10th schedule amendment was supported by virtually every political party in parliament. So Rajiv Gandhi was prime minister. Rajiv Gandhi had come back with a massive majority following 1984 Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, unparalleled in the history of parliamentary democracy in India. But perhaps he may have also felt the need, although there was no need for Congress at that stage to fear defections. But it was a good thing that he brought about, to purify the public life. And so the committee was set up. The committee, recommended this. Committee looked at the history right from the 50s of defections. And so they recommended that we have to stop this. And that is how the, 10th schedule was added to the constitution. I would say it was an extraordinarily wise and a very, very futuristic move on the part of Rajiv Gandhi's government. And I must say that it was really great that the opposition parties also supported such a move. It was a measure which was supposed to have checked the defections. It's a different matter that it has not worked at all over the last 40 years.
So, looking back, would you say that Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, of course, he did take the right step? Was it still one in haste, wherein we are now repenting in leisure?
No, I don't think there is anything to repent. Unfortunately, people have misunderstood 10th schedule. If 10th schedule is interpreted in a literal sense and to subserve the object behind it, then I think this kind of defections will stop forthwith. But it all depends as to what view the Supreme Court takes. To my mind, 10th schedule must be interpreted very, very strictly. My view is to prevail. Each of these people stand disqualified forthwith.
Yes, you've said that the rot must stop, quote unquote.
Yes, rot has to stop. The 10th schedule has to be read with Article 101 and 102 of the Constitution. The word used is very interesting in 10th schedule. The word used is that if a member has voluntarily given up his membership of a political party on the platform of which he got elected. Now, take for example these people who Shiv Sena members, 6 of them who were on a platform with Honorable Mr. Shinde. Now, they have therefore categorically said that we have voluntarily left Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's party. The moment they say so, then they stand disqualified. Their number doesn't matter, which I will explain to you later. But the moment they voluntarily give up, and it's not necessary to give up in writing, you can voluntarily give up by your conduct. So by conduct, you have left the party on the platform of which you got elected, and you have now chosen to align yourself with another political party. That's the end of the matter. That's what Constitution, Article 101, 102, read with paragraph 2 of the 10th schedule clearly provides. This requires a very interesting debate in the Supreme Court, and I hope Supreme Court rises for the occasion and really subserves the interest behind 10th schedule and tries to protect our democracy. We need really a tremendous support from the Supreme Court to stop this kind of nonsense which is going on.
You gave Eknath Shinde's example. Doesn't the same rule apply to the TMC defectors?
Absolutely it does. It does. It applies to every one of them. Nobody is willing to read the text of 10th schedule in literal sense. Everybody thinks that a split is possible and therefore 6 of them can walk out. No. See, that's not possible. The right is vested by paragraph 4 of the 10th schedule in the political party itself to, merge itself with another party. And if political parties, 2/3 majority members agree, then only that political party can do it. So the right is not with individual members. It's with a political party which is supported from within by 2/3 members. Now, understanding is that 2/3 members walk out. Therefore, they have a right to ditch the party. There is a split and therefore they can join anybody else. I don't agree to that interpretation at all. When Parliament enacted it, the whole idea was to protect. Idea was not to give loopholes. These kind of loopholes are completely unheard of, nonsensical. In no jurisprudence, this argument would be accepted as it is being accepted in India by the Supreme Court. It really saddens me that judges have really not tried to stop the, this kind of defections and have encouraged defections in the name of 2/3 members splitting from an original party. I am shocked by this kind of interpretation by the Supreme Court.
I was going to ask you about the role of the courts, and I get a sense that the courts have really not measured up. What can be done? What should the courts do? And where have they failed? And why have they failed?
Courts are also comprising of human beings. And the judges also don't come from, Mars and the moon. The judges also have their own ambitions, their own worries, their own anxieties. But they have taken constitutional oath to uphold the Constitution, to abide by the law, and to decide without fear or favor. You have to take it with great sanctity, that oath. What has happened is that over the years, judiciary has undergone a serious change. So when Mrs. Gandhi was in power, for example, the judges, were ideologically aligned to Mrs. Gandhi. She talked of socialism, Garibi Hatao. Some of the best judges compromised. They were, doing it because it pleased the Prime Minister. Same judges again during emergency, when Mrs. Gandhi imposed emergency, failed us, who said that, when emergency is there, citizens' fundamental rights can be suspended. It was only Justice Khanna who stood, fearlessly and said, nothing doing, you can't do it. So this started during Mrs. Gandhi's time. Now, over the years, what has happened is that the judges have increasingly become pro-establishment. They are extraordinarily conscious of who is in power and how strong that person is in power. Today, Prime Minister Modi is in power. He is extraordinarily powerful. He is very popular. So it takes a tremendous courage for a judge to really decide against his government, his policies, and his actions, or his party's actions. It is bound to happen. Judges have ceased to be fearlessly independent, and they therefore take a view, which finds favor with the party in power. Judiciary was conceived to be a check and balance over, both parliament and the executive. Now, if judiciary doesn't keep that check, then I think we citizens are left with no remedy at all.
Talking specifically about the anti-defection law, where have the courts failed us?
Well, for example, in the first judgment, that Kyoto's case, which upheld the constitutional validity of, the law, Chief Justice Venkatachala, his judgment fell short of the interpretation on paragraph 4. I mean, he went and interpreted paragraph 2. It was the duty of Supreme Court then to have interpreted paragraph 4 and should have said that this kind of a, two-third majority doesn't mean that any, a group of people can walk away with two-third majority. So 6 out of 9 Rajya Sabha members of Mr. Thackeray walk away. Therefore, they are legitimate. No, they are not. And that is where Supreme Court, I think made a first mistake, that they did not interpret the 10th schedule in its letter and spirit. They were more concerned about paragraph 2. They were more concerned about paragraph 7, which they declared it to be unconstitutional. But then they should have actually gone into paragraph 4 and said that split means split of a political party at the instance of a political party. It can't be a split of a few members. So it makes mockery. I mean, because you have been elected on the platform of a particular party. See, you have to realize that there is a connect between a member and his constituents, the people who have elected. The people have a right to ensure that they have given a vote to this gentleman on the platform of Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray. Now, or Congress or TMC or whatever it is, or BJP for that matter tomorrow. So people have a right. It is people's right you are now meddling with. People's mandate you are meddling with. People's aspirations you are, meddling with. So ideal course, and this is how Supreme Court should interpret and say that, all right, you 6 gentlemen from Shiv Sena or TMC, you want to leave and join somebody else, fine. You first resign your positions, or that you stand disqualified, and you please recontest on platform of Bharatiya Janata Party. You're welcome to do that. Nothing wrong about it. And then get yourself elected. So that is the way it should be. Take, for example, I mean, this is a hypothetical case, but let's say that tomorrow the richest man, very rich man in the country, decides that I want to topple the government. He, quietly, secretly offers each member 500 or 1,000 crores of rupees and says that you please support. You all walk out. What happens? He has a backing of a political party with 5 members. So he now lures 200 people in, or 250 people into that 5-member party. I mean, what kind of a talk we are having in this country today? What kind of discussion? Do we not realize the dangers of this? Someday democracy will be hijacked by rich and the powerful.
I'm going to come to that, but let me request you to decode para 2 and para 4. And after that, the 1/3 and 2/3 puzzle. Is it MPs or the party? Because legislative party and political parties are not the same. And I think in the Eknath Shinde case, the courts made that distinction. And 2, the split versus the merger. What is the legal position on all these?
Look, Shinde's judgment I have refused to read because I don't think it gets down the correct law. But I will tell you paragraph 2. If you read paragraph 2 on its own language, it categorically says a member of a house belonging to any political party. It doesn't say legislative party. Member belonging to a political party shall be disqualified for being a member of the house if he has voluntarily given up his membership of such political party. Okay, or he votes against it, or acts against the mandate issued by or whip issued by the party on platform of whom he is elected. Member of a political party, here legislative party is not relevant for paragraph 2. So now let us assume that he has voluntarily given up. Didn't yesterday 6 people voluntarily give up their membership by standing on a common platform with Mr. Shinde? It would be travesty of justice if one were to say no, they have not voluntarily given up. They have not sent any letter to the speaker. You don't need the parliament has used words very carefully. If he has voluntarily given up his membership, it doesn't say it should be in writing. You look at this conduct, that's good enough.
But the TMC, the rebels or those who defected, gave that in writing, the 20 plus signatures.
If you give writing, it's worse that you have given up the membership. Very few people have really understood that 10th schedule has to be read in conjunction with Article 101 and 102. 101 says disqualification of members, vacation of seats. It says if a member of either house of parliament becomes subject to any disqualifications mentioned in clause 1 or clause 2 of Article 102. Now, clause 1 of Article 102 speaks about, he is unsound mind, insolvent, etc. We ignore that. Clause 2 of Article 102 says a person shall be, it's mandatory, shall be disqualified for being a member of either house of parliament if he is so disqualified under the 10th schedule. 10th schedule says that if you have voluntarily given up your membership, you are disqualified. So it's a deeming fiction. 102 is a constitutional provision. 10th schedule is part of the constitution. So you go out. Simply, there is nothing to debate about it. Now, when you come to paragraph 4 of 10th schedule, it says disqualification on ground of defection not to apply in case of merger. That's the title. But when is that merger taking place? A member of a house shall not be disqualified under subparagraph 1 of paragraph 2, where his original political party merges with another political party, and he claims that he and any other member of his original party have become members of other political party, or that they have decided to act as a separate group. So his political party must decide to merge.
Not the legislative party.
No, the original political party, Mr. Thackeray's party, for example, or Mamata Banerjee's party, they have to decide that we want to merge with someone. The merger of original political party of a member of house shall be deemed to have taken place if and only if not less than 2/3 members of the legislature party concerned have agreed to such merger. This split or 2/3 members which is being argued, or what Shinde's judgment says, I would say it's a complete misreading of the provisions. In fact, the provision has been completely held to be nugatory by the interpretation which is now taking place on a daily basis in political life. After 2014, it started with every state. It began with Maharashtra, then went to Madhya Pradesh, then Goa, then Karnataka. State after state, this kind of nonsense took place where, bunch of legislators decided to leave and support the Bharatiya Janata Party and bring down respective Congress or other governments. So, fair enough. I mean, they can do. But question is, what is the true legal position? The true legal position is that you don't stand disqualified if your political party has decided to merge with another political party. Then you can, either join member of the new political party in which old party is merged, or you can sit separately as a group. But the political party also does not have, freedom to do this. Political party can do it, this merger, only if 2/3 members of the political party support that merger. So 6 people going on their own doesn't make any sense. Mr. Uddhav Thackeray or Mamata Banerjee have not decided to merge their political parties with anyone. So that is the answer. The whole idea is to prevent defections. And this interpretation will help preventing defection. Today, the argument which is being canvassed, by BJP and its, legal experts, and also, by the court, unfortunately, is completely to destroy the very philosophy, very object behind 10th schedule.
So, what is the interpretation which the courts and the BJP are following?
They are saying that if the two-third members walk out of any group, that's the end of the matter. Or one-third members walk out, it's the end of any, this thing. So I can't understand where they get this, kind of exemptions from.
But this has been happening all along. It's always the MPs or the legislators.
See, it has been happening. It's a separate matter because it's been happening because the courts have condoned it. And courts have done violence to the language of, this 10th schedule. Courts should have really gone behind the very purpose of 10th schedule. They should have said that it was to cure defection. It was not to encourage defections. Frankly, every speaker, of a parliament or state assembly and the judiciary have an obligation to ensure that the very purpose of 10th schedule is subserved and is furthered, not that it is diluted.
And the other 2 points, the 1/3 and 2/3 puzzle, and the split versus the merger.
There is nothing called a split. The 10th schedule does not use the word split anywhere. Supposing tomorrow Congress parliamentary party decides to merge with BJP. So 2/3 members of Congress party have to support that move. If they don't support, Congress party cannot merge. That is the purpose of it. Now, if 2/3 members of the Congress party decide and write a letter to Speaker that we have now gone and merged and get themselves photographed with Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah, that's not recognized by the 10th schedule. That's a clear case of defection. They are not protected. They all stand disqualified.
When you say parliamentary party, it has to be the members of parliament, and in the case of state assemblies, the legislators.
This distinction between a political party and legislative party is non-existent. Real, power is with a political party to merge. But that political party, when it merges and its members of parliament or assembly, they, can be protected against defection, provided 2/3 of those members have supported their political party to merge. Legislative party independently in 10th schedule has no existence. Political party is what matters.
Going by this, if Mamata Banerjee is the head of the party and she decides not to merge, but the majority of the legislators or the members of parliament decide, then who will take this decision?
No,
Because
they
the
can't do it.
majority is with the rebel group.
They have to then resign. They have to seek re-election. They have no right to demolish or destroy the base of the political party on the platform which they got elected.
Okay, which means that this demand for symbol and all that is irrelevant.
Yes, it's unconstitutional to my mind. The demand for a symbol, demand for sitting separately is unconstitutional. They stand disqualified. You go to this merger and all later. First question is that these 6 people or TMC members stood, publicly and said, we are now leaving TMC or Shiv Sena. They stand disqualified under Article 102 read with, paragraph 2 of the 10th schedule. Now, if they want to protect themselves under paragraph 4, their political party should have sought merger, which is not what has happened. So this argument of 2/3, 1/3 is a non-starter. It's complete misreading of the provision.
On another point, is the challenge bigger now, given that coalition politics is now a rule rather than an exception in India?
Well, that's a political question. I really won't have an answer, but I must say one thing, looking at what is happening today, that even in the last election, despite his popularity, Prime Minister Modi could not, get himself absolute majority for his party, Bharatiya Janata Party, and had to therefore fall back on the coalition support from Chandrababu Naidu and Mr. Nitish Kumar. Today, there is no other political party which can get an absolute majority, which Congress got, for example, in 1984 elections.
So, what's the point you're making?
Very clear that the coalition is now there to exist in this country.
And the danger of defections greater?
Well, danger of defection is bound to be greater because our own character is gone. We are easily lured by, all kinds of temptations, money, position, power. We are not willing to stand up on principles. The defections are bound to take place unless this court comes down and says nothing doing. You want to cross, resign, get elected. Nobody will do it, but believe you me, none of these people will have courage to, tomorrow resign and get themselves re-elected. For example, immediately after Bombay or Madhya Pradesh or Goa or Karnataka, if elections were ordered on the next day, these defecting members would not have been re-elected. People would have taught them lesson.
You have spoken about some, but let me ask you pointedly, what are the loopholes and the gaps in the law in its present form?
There is no loophole. 10th schedule is clear as daylight, and Supreme Court needs to interpret it strictly to ensure that defections do not take place. The whole purpose of bringing that amendment was to prevent defections, not to allow some side windows, to have defections. So I think it's Supreme Court will have to do it. Let's see what it does. Although I don't have much hope from the Supreme Court today.
Why do you say that?
Since 2014, almost every judgment has been in favor of the government of Mr. Modi. Whether it is Rafael, whether it's Ayodhya, whether it is CBI director's removal, every sensitive case, government has won. I have been a lawyer for 48 years. I respect judiciary. I love judiciary. But I must say, judiciary has failed us, barring few judges. But there are, few judges who are willing to stick their neck out and uphold the constitution. And, things have become so bad now in Supreme Court that these good judges do not get politically sensitive matters. The politically sensitive matters go only to select benches.
Even at the cost of being hauled up, I will still push this point and say that you are making a serious charge against the judiciary.
I'm not making a charge, it's a fact. Truth. There are hardly any cases which are decided in, against the government today.
Coming back to the anti defection law, aren't we in a worse kind of situation? Because earlier there were individuals who were defecting, and now the law helps split parties and it's en bloc. So the numbers are larger, the corruption is larger.
Yes, we are. We are. And every political party is responsible. It's not Bharatiya Janata Party alone. Congress has also done this nonsense earlier.
And if this trend continues, then there would be no opposition worth the name in our democracy.
There is no doubt that Mr. Modi and Bharatiya Janata Party want opposition Mukt Bharat today. Why do you think these members are being encouraged to leave their respective parties so that, BJP gets 2/3 majority in Rajya Sabha and they can pass, constitutional amendment on delimitation. And once they pass, the number of seats will get increased and the Hindi belt, and that's where their power is today, the Hindi belt. They are not unable to penetrate in South, but they have penetrated the Hindi belt thanks to Lord Ram. So, this is what their whole idea is. And they will therefore perpetuate power for a long, long time.
Staking a claim before the speaker is notional because most speakers are inclined to decide in favor of the government. At another level, delaying the decision is the key. In Manipur, for instance, the speaker delayed the decision for 3 years and a defector became minister. Reports have it that in 71% cases, defectors are ministers.
Look, there is nothing which can be done about it. Speaker is presumed to be partisan today. Every political party chooses a man who is not going to be independent. You are appointed because you are not going to be independent.
Would you say we have reached a dead end, or is there a way out? If yes, what is the way forward? And to quote you, how can the rot stop?
We will not be able to stop this rot at all. If opposition has any courage and if they really want to, take the BJP on this kind of nonsense, they must en masse resign from every seat in parliament, every seat in assembly, every seat in panchayat. They should refuse to participate in the election process till election commissioners are independently appointed, till we bring back the ballot papers as the way to have voting. There is no other way BJP can be stopped today. BJP has so much power. They have political power, they have money power, they have muscle power. It's unstoppable. And if opposition thinks that it can win any election now, then they are living in a fool's paradise. We are lost as a democracy. We are now a party dictatorship. What saddens me more is that a party as responsible as Bharatiya Janata Party is supported by RSS. Why should they allow this kind of a rot? When history is written 100 years later, it will be uncharitable, unkind to them. Despite, Mr. Modi as today the most popular man, he is untouchable by any political leader in the country. He has the energy. He is wanting to work hard. He wants to do something for India. But then he takes one step forward and takes two steps backward by encouraging this nonsense. Frankly, I am a proud permanent pessimist. I don't see any hope for this country.
I would hate to end on a pessimistic note, but since you've called yourself a permanent pessimist, I would have to let it go. Let me thank you, Mr. Dushyant Dave, for your time and for taking all the questions and decoding the anti-defection law for our viewers.
Thank you so much.